When I was sitting at my desk at the NSA, working with tools of mass surveillance every day, I saw that the public statements of our government were inconsistent with the reality of what was actually happening to everybody in the world. And we're not talking about terrorist suspects. All of our communications were being intercepted all of the time in the absence of any suspicion of wrongdoing. And this was something that was occurring without our knowledge, without our consent, and without any sort of democratic participation from the public. And when I looked at the laws that were on the books, it seemed clear to me that these programs were unlawful. As I began thinking about if there was anything I could do to give the public a chance to decide whether these programs should continue, I thought about the costs, I thought about the risks, and it's a big decision. But then I saw the most senior intelligence official in the United States, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, raise his hand and swear to tell the truth on the floor of Congress, on camera, in front of the entire American people. And he was directly asked by a senator who knew that mass surveillance was occurring if the NSA was collecting any records at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans. And he said, no, sir, they're not wittingly. And that was untrue. I had a special level of clearance called Priv-Ac, privileged access, where normal people have to request access to this document or that document. I had access to everything by nature of my role. And that included documents from the British government.
But it doesn't say a lot for the NSA's security systems if you can simply go off and take all these documents with you.
There's an unconfronted challenge in the public debate since the revelations of 2013, which is that we are expected to trust these agencies with complete access to the total details of our lives.
And they're expected to trust people like you. That's a trust that you betrayed.
But it's actually not a trust that I betrayed, because when you enter into service at the Central Intelligence Agency or the National Security Agency, you're asked to swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. If these agencies are engaged in unconstitutional activities, and the courts have sided with me that these activities were unconstitutional, they should not make us swear an oath to stand up and stop such activities when we witness them. I fulfilled the roles and the obligations of my oath in a manner which they did not. I haven't benefited in any way from the disclosure of this information. Moreover, I have never published a single document. I worked with journalists who, in American society at least, are the representatives of the public in determining what the public interest is in understanding certain facts and realities that the government many times would prefer to keep secret.
When you decided to make these revelations, did you think about the possible consequences that you might end up an exile, not necessarily in Russia, but that you would be pursued and the United States government is unlikely to call it a day? It's going to pursue you until it gets you.
Oh, of course.
You must have done.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody who can be in that situation.
And many years in jail.
I was more concerned with the consequences for society generally. Would this cause harm? Would anybody face some unnecessary risk as a result? What I thought about exhaustively was, how do we make sure that we know what we need to in order to be able to protect ourselves and to be able to protect free society against the natural inclinations of secret agencies and bureaucracy as technology continues to advance and they gain more and more power.
What is the relationship between the NSA, the National Security Agency in America, and GCHQ, the UK equivalent?
The easiest way to conceptualize that relationship is that the GCHQ is, for almost all intents and purposes, a subsidiary of the NSA. The NSA, more often than not, provides funding. I believe they provide millions of dollars to the GCHQ's budget every year. They provide technology, they provide tasking and direction as to what they should go after. And in exchange, the GCHQ provides access to communications that are collected in the United Kingdom and at all of the different bases and points of collection that are under the control of the United Kingdom.
Around the world?
Around the world. And this includes within the UK. Now, there are a lot of claims made by government that we won't share information on this UK citizen or that UK citizen as a matter of principle. But then we see they also caveat these rules to an extreme degree where they say, well, that doesn't count if it's metadata. That only counts if it's the content of a communication, and so on and so forth.
But the NSA and GCHQ say, yes, we collect massive, huge amounts of data, but the actual amount of data that we look at in particular is minuscule. That they're not in the business of finding out about everybody. They have particular targets in which they're interested, and their collection methodology means that they can, in the end, identify the people that they're looking for, the terrorists or the criminals or the drug traffickers. But to find out who those targets are, they've got to collect mass data.
Well, let's presume that their claims match the reality of what's happening. Let's say that they are collecting all of this information about everybody. They know everything that you do, everywhere you go.
But they're not interested.
But they're not interested, and they don't read it. And they only use this when it's necessary and proportionate to a serious criminal threat. That sounds like a pretty persuasive claim that they could make to the public and get legislation to support that, right? So why didn't they? Isn't that something that the public should have a say in?
But many members of the public, certainly in the UK, would say, yes, GCHQ are doing this, and frankly, I don't care if it helps them identify the bad guys, and I've got nothing to hide because I'm a good guy.
Many people would say that, and they wouldn't necessarily be wrong, and this is something that people can debate. But the question that's raised by that is it true? Are these programs effective? Do they keep us safe? We've had mass surveillance in the United States for more than 10 years now. The White House appointed 2 investigatory panels, and they found that these programs were not effective in stopping terrorist attacks. The value that these programs have is for intelligence gathering. The problem is, these programs are justified to the public as anti-terrorism programs. They do have a very strong value in the context of intelligence gathering, but that's not the same as saying this is a public safety program.
Another Snowden document, codenamed PRISM, revealed the relationship between the NSA and the American-based social media companies like Google, Facebook, and Yahoo. Under PRISM, the companies were legally obliged to give the NSA direct access to whatever information they required. PRISM's purpose was to track foreign terrorists living outside the USA.
PRISM revealed that the government would go to this secret court that would provide these secret orders. It's a rubber stamp court that never says no. And they would say, we want to have access to this individual's communications or that individual's communications without going through the typical legal process of an open court.
Nobody knew this was going on.
And nobody knew that this was going on.
What information can the agencies get from this, a smartphone?
Who you call, what you've texted, the things you've browsed on your phone, the list of your contacts, the places you've been, the wireless networks that your phone is associated with, for example, at your home and your office. So the Smurf suite is a collection of capabilities specifically targeting the iPhone. Dreamy Smurf is the power management tool, which means turning your phone on or off without you knowing.
Even if I've turned my phone off?
Right.
And then we've got Nosy Smurf. What's Nosy Smurf?
Nosy Smurf is the hot miking tool. Hot miking is when you activate the microphone on a telephone as if it were having a call but without anybody dialing a call. So for example, if it's in your pocket, they can turn the microphone on and listen to everything that's going on around you.
Even if my phone is switched off?
Even if your phone's switched off, because they've got the other tools for turning it on.
Tracker Smurf. What's Tracker Smurf?
That's a geolocation tool which allows them to follow you with a greater precision than you would get from the typical triangulation of cell phone towers.
Do those principles apply to other smartphones?
Absolutely. What you want to think about is that a cell phone is a constantly connected location device that has a microphone attached to it. And if you were a surveillance agency, it's sort of a target that's simply too tempting to ignore.
Another Snowden document revealed how GCHQ hacked data from a foreign country using a technique known as CNE.
Computer network exploitation is basically digital espionage. You're trying to control things that you don't own through digital code, digital weapons, to gain information, intelligence about their operation.
One of the documents that you revealed, again marked top secret, is about computer network exploitation. And one section refers to the way, this is a GCHQ document, refers to the way in which GCHQ hacked into or hacked the Cisco router into Pakistan. And it says, this affords access to almost any user of the internet inside Pakistan. Now, how would they do that?
So the way the internet works is you've got your computer on one end and you've got the other person's computer on the other. But in order to make that wire connect from here to here, it's got to go through network operators, network service providers. Now, what the intelligence agencies like to do is they'll hack those network service providers and secretly take ownership of the devices that are affecting traffic.
Without the service providers knowing about it?
Without the service providers ever knowing about it.
And when, in this particular case, Cisco found out, what was Cisco's reaction?
Well, the companies will be incredibly angry because what they're doing is they're compromising the trust in the product and services that these companies, which are critical parts of our economy, have with their customers. The question that these companies ask is, who do we work for? Our customers or the government?
This GCHQ document that shows how GCHQ accessed the Cisco routers was legal. It wasn't illegal, because the document is about seeking authorization for continuation of these kind of programs. So we're not talking about illegalities here. This was quite legal.
Sometimes what's scariest is not what the government is doing that's unlawful, but what they're doing that is completely lawful. Now, the danger of these programs is that when you hack a router, you're not monitoring one person. You're monitoring millions of people.
The UK Parliament is about to start debating an important new piece of legislation called the Investigatory Powers Bill. What would you say to our legislators when they are considering what they should say and how they should vote?
You need to impose a structure of oversight that will allow both members of government and the public to verify that their activities are proper and appropriate at all times, and that those who violate them can be held to account. I think the real question is, who is best positioned to assess the lawfulness of an intrusion into an individual's rights? A minister or a judge? When I look at it, it seems quite clear to me that the courts should be the place to resolve those controversies.
On social media, at the moment, there appears to be a standoff between the social media companies, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, and the government. The intelligence agencies say, we need access to the material that you've got because we wish to identify the bad guys. The social media companies, or most of them, are saying, but wait a minute, our priority is privacy. Where do you stand on that?
It's really a question of free enterprise. Who do companies work for? Do they work for their customers or do they work for governments? And remember, if a company begins accepting requests to break the security of their communications for one government, they have to do it for all of them, or they'll be excluded from the markets.
You mean they have to do it for the Russian government,
right,
the Chinese government?
Precisely. If we say we'll build a backdoor for the United Kingdom to be able to search for terrorists, the Chinese will immediately come forward and say, if you want to sell your product in China, you have to provide us with the same capability.